Welcome to the FasCat Training Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Frank Overton. Some call me the Big Cat, and I'm joined by Jackson Long.
In the house. It's a pleasure. Back in the... It's just...
It's spring now.
It is spring. Spring has sprung, and I actually rode my bike before the podcast today, which is,
amazing.
I think, a first in a long time.
Didn't we have
this year.
Wasn't it the cyclone last week?
Yeah, it was the bomb cyclone last week.
Bomb cyclone last week and beautiful.
Now it's like 50 degrees.
Yeah.
So, are you going to ride this afternoon?
Hell yeah.
Nice.
I rode without gloves yesterday.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
But it was still only like 40, 50 degrees yesterday, but that feels super warm and balmy compared to what it's been.
Yeah, the sun. Yeah. You know, talking with the athletes that I coach, everyone has had a crappy winter.
Yeah.
Everyone is so ready to just ride outside. And daylight savings hit, and some people are able to ride outside. It's still cold in many parts of the country, but for everyone out there, you know, it's coming. Spring is around riding outside consistently is around the corner. Spring was like 2 days ago.
No, yesterday was the first day of spring.
Oh, geez. Yeah. First day of spring. Okay.
What are we talking about today?
Q&A.
Ooh, it's that time of the month.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is our like a regeneration week every 4 weeks. This is our Q&A. This is our third one that we've done. And we got, I think, 8 or 9 user submitted questions. Thank you for submitting those, everyone. And we're going to go over them. Do we have any announcements?
We do, yeah. With training, the training camp, the coaching intensive.
Talk a little
bit about that. Some updates.
So we have our one camper has already signed up. It's August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th that weekend. And so what we're going to do, because that camper is coming to Colorado to train for the Steamboat Gravel. We just made that weekend a gravel specific camp. And because we're only having 2 campers per weekend, we're going to make that about a 3.5 watt per kilogram camp based on the other campers' abilities. So we don't want one guy at 4.5 and another camper at 3.5. We want similar rider ability. So we are just, we're going with 3.5 watts per kilogram. We're going to do a ton of gravel. We're going to train for the Steamboat Gravel. And, you know, we definitely have it here in Colorado. So,
where can people learn more about that if they want to like get some questions answered about it, or if they want to sign up?
It probably the best thing to do is listen to the podcast from last week, because that's the most in depth we've gone into it. You can email me in the meantime, and I have like a Google Doc crafted up. That's probably the best thing. If you have any questions about it, just go ahead and say the questions. I can send you the Google Doc if you get in touch with me. And that's probably the best way. I don't have a web page built out yet. Working on that. The forum is coming first.
Yes.
That has our budget priority.
Wheels are in motion.
Wheels are in motion, folks. We are about one phone call and one meeting away from pulling the trigger with our web developers on a really nice forum. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it looks good.
We're going to get Jackson to moderate an entire section on nutrition. Yeah.
Good.
And we're going to have sections on, power-based training, using Training Peaks the best, obviously training plans, FTFPing, a lot of topics. We'll probably have a women's cycling section, moderated by Allie. What else? What other sections do we have? I forgot.
There could be endless ones.
Yeah, we're really excited with the forum. It's going to be great. And for all the people listening in Facebook land, we're moving our private Facebook group over to the forum based on your feedback. And this, apparently, from a lot of people, this would allow them to have a Facebook-free existence.
Ooh.
Yeah, me too. That's the only reason why I go to Facebook now, is to moderate our group. So, do we have another announcement?
Yeah, I think so. You're out of town for spring break. And then, so I think we're going to try and keep the podcast going. Isaiah and I are right now working out the details of doing a podcast, probably more nutrition focused, plant-based, cycling focused, as both of us, Isaiah's vegetarian, I'm vegan. So we're going to talk about that hopefully sometime next week. So stay tuned. But Frank will be MIA for the first time. Do you trust us?
I'm giving you the keys to the castle.
All right.
I'm taking a vacation next week. Vacations as a business owner, especially a small business owner, are pretty stressful. I have been working my ass off the last couple weeks. I've been working my ass off all year, but it's even intensified so that I can clear my calendar for next week. And
hit the reset button, clear the head.
That's right. Going iOS free, putting the phones and the computers away. I'm the bad guy in my family right now because my kids are pissed at me because I'm taking away their phones. And it's funny, I've talked with other parents about this and they applaud me, but then they're like, "Oh, I don't want to have to do that."
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. And the more and more you look out there, the more research there is about developmental.
Oh yeah.
This is the first generation that have had iPhones their whole life. And there's a lot of negative effects out there. And, it's an addiction and, we are certainly addicted to it. And it's going to be a hard 3 days. We're just doing 3 days, not the whole trip.
Yeah. But that's still like the most that they've probably been away from their phones
ever.
Which
except when they got grounded.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, when you ground your kids and take their phone away for a week, they change. They become different kids, and then all of a sudden they will come downstairs and hang out with you in the living room. They'll engage you in conversation. With that phone, they're upstairs in their room Snapchatting and Instagramming. They're just glued to it. That's their social outlet.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to kind of take that away. We could do a whole podcast on this, and I'm not even an expert. I'm just a parent. I'm the bad guy right now.
Yeah.
So. But these guys are going to keep the podcast alive. I hope. Yeah.
Hopefully we will. We're scheduling it right now. But then, so then for those of you in Facebook world, as you're listening to this, if you do have questions, feel free to submit them in. But we're going to just get started with our questions from listeners sent in via email.
Yeah. We have Coach Jake in the house. Hey, Coach Jake. He is in this, the Facebook moderator. So you guys go ahead and ask your questions in the Facebook comments. For those in podcast land, here we go. We got some great questions.
Cool. All right. Number 1 comes from Erica, and she asks about full gas. What does that mean? Am I really supposed to be, in reality, targeting the suggested power that appears in the workout description, or aim for that as a minimum, or workout by feel? How do you explain full gas, and how do you actually accomplish that in your training, in your intervals?
Yeah. So coming from our side, we think this is a no-brainer, but I know where this is coming from, Erica. This is a good question. One of the things that's gotten so common these days in the training software is zones. And there's zone 5, 105 to 120% of your FTP. There's zone 6, there's sweet spot, of course, and everything. And zone 4, being 95 to 104%. And the software literally tells you that. And it'll say do VO2 max intervals from 300 to 330 watts, for example. And where I'm coming from as a coach is I'm a glass half full coach. I always, you may be able to surprise yourself. You may be able to do better. Your FTP may have increased. We just haven't tested it recently. And I don't want a piece of software to hold you back. Like, if your VO2 max intervals are easy because you hit the high end of it, well, I don't think you got the most out of those VO2 max intervals. So I want athletes to push yourself, go full gas, perform the intervals properly. We have 2 training tips on our website, how to perform intervals properly, the right way and the wrong way. Check that training tip out. And to not leave anything on the table when they do their VO2 max intervals. So always go as hard as you can. And that's what full gas is. And I think, do you remember when we podcasted about this earlier? Maybe it was like 6 months ago. I was talking about when I was in Italy with the national team, and that was when everyone was talking about going full gas.
Yeah,
and
it's so Euro. I mean, yeah. I feel like I listened to, like, after Strada Bianchi, an interview with Alaphilippe, and like he was just taught, like, they were just like, oh, so like what happened? How did the race? He's like, oh, I just in the last minute I just go full gas. It's like they just all the Euros say just
full gas.
It's just like,
and they do the throttle.
Yeah, they do full gas.
The throttle gesture. So
it's so good.
That's you're gonna have to do that in your races. So I think you should do that in your training. And so that's what zone 4, 5, and 6 intervals are, including sprints and Tabatas. We're not talking about sweet spot or tempo or zone 2, but you got to get used to that. And especially when you're doing your VO2s, you're going full gas, but, and then there's a whole different, like, how to execute intervals properly, which is not this question, but, go check out those training tips and go full gas.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminded me of Tyler Durden in Fight Club. Hit the quote of the things you own end up, or like something along the lines of the things you own eventually start to own you. Oh yeah. So it's like, don't let, like, Training Peaks is an amazing tool and power meters and all this stuff, but don't let it control you and own you because, or hold you back, like you said, because, like, people have been going full gas ever since bikes were invented, and so it's a lot of it is feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very Henry David Thoreau.
Yeah, totally.
For all you literature geeks out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's WKOI levels, which I do not like. There's, just go as hard as you can. Get the most out of your intervals. Mm-hmm. That's what full gas to me is. Okay.
Number 2, from our private Facebook group, basically, what are your thoughts about active recovery and active recovery days in the training plan?
Yeah. So I have some pretty strong opinions here. I want to share them with you guys. I think most masters athletes don't really need to be doing active recovery days. In fact, we need to film a YouTube video of me sitting on the couch on my recovery days. And, I think, I just think whether or not you do. So first of all, let me preface this. A zone 1 active recovery ride is not going to make you faster, right? It's, they're in the scientific literature, bringing oxygenated blood to fatigued muscles to help flush out metabolic byproducts of exercise is beneficial. That's proven. But it doesn't make you faster. It may make you feel better and recover better. But here's the deal. It's kind of comes down to, like, your life situation. Did you just finish a 11-hour workday on a Monday and you got kids to put to bed and, you're tired as all get out from the weekend. And
you're stressed because you're like, oh, I should ride. I should have this active recovery ride, but you got a million other things to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. You should not do an active recovery ride that day. And so, but maybe, so in that case, you'd be better off, spending the extra time in your day balancing back the rest of your life. I don't know about you guys, but when I wake up in the morning, I work really hard, and then I want to work really hard so that I can ride during the day. And then after you get back from a ride, you keep working. But, on days when I have my off days, I feel like this relief that I don't have to hustle all day to find time to ride. So that's what a recovery day is for on your training plans. That psychological stress, you just remove it from, having to follow that training plan. So, I think it's important. I also think there's a macho thing to riding to active recovery days, and people are doing 1-hour rides.
# no days off. The whole thing. Well, and it's like, like you can also think about it like what could you do that's also productive in an hour that will help and benefit your training down the line. So, wash your bike. That takes 20 minutes, have
food
a clean
prep
bike.
Monday.
Food prep Monday.
Yeah.
Like, go grocery shopping, eat a really healthy, nourishing meal, stuff like that like will actually significantly impact and improve your training quality.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we assume that you're going to do on your off days when you're not training. You're going to take that hour and a half that you're not riding, and that's when you're going to do your recovery activities. We're talking massage, naps, going to bed early, food prep, actually cooking your meals. Food prep goes beyond just going to the grocery store. I mean, if you're super busy Tuesday through Friday, there's a lot of athletes out there that are, they've got the killer set of Tupperware. They're making all their, rice and steamed broccoli, and they're putting their food in, Tupperware, and it's good that, they wake up in the morning, they pull it out of the fridge, take it with them to work. So, that's the level of detail that can go into your recovery days. But just know that a zone 1 ride doesn't make you faster. And if it makes you more tired, more stressed, then you're doing more harm than good. And then also anything over an hour, even if it's zone 1, no longer is an active recovery ride. That is adding stress into your body. So for the metrics people, the CTL, the TSS, coffee shop rides, zone 1 are like 20 and less. Zone 1 only, you should have a watt ceiling of like 60% of your FTP. Heart rate should not get even up into zone 2.
Keep it in the little ring.
Yeah, little ring only, flat terrain, no city limit sprints.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. In my opinion, I think you're better off spending that hour, doing some stretching and mobility stuff, yoga. Like go to a yoga class like that. I mean, unless it's like you don't want to go to like some like intense like hot hip hop yoga,
right? Hip hop yoga.
Toning,
Pilates. The pod fit.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what my yoga studio calls
you want to
it.
go to like a restorative yoga class. Where you're just like holding like deep stretches for a while, But
and just breathe, man.
Yeah, just breathe. And then
you should feel good after it. Yeah.
Then go get your moon lettuce after.
Yeah, your organic moon lettuce. The other thing I think active recovery rides, kind of touch on is just this exercise addiction.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can't take a recovery day. And it's like, man, you really should. And that's another thing. You should never do an active recovery ride on the trainer.
Yeah.
If you've been banned to the trainer all winter long, for goodness gracious, don't get on the trainer when when you don't have to. Just literally laying on the couch is as good as an active recovery ride in a busy life situation. Yeah. We could beat this with a dead horse.
All right. Next question from Chris regarding winning in the kitchen. What do you eat after a ride?
Yeah. This came up in our private Facebook group. This goes to food prep and having your stuff ready and waiting for you. You come back from a ride. I go straight into the fridge and I heat up chicken and rice.
So you have it prepped beforehand.
That's right. Yeah, so my
Meal
prep Monday, or when I'm making breakfast in the morning, I'll make extra rice, extra steamed vegetables. I always have my lettuce good to go. Believe it or not, it's the chicken which you have to kind of stay on top of, because I'll grill a couple of chicken breasts at a time, and then those go pretty quick. So the when I'm super dialed, you go for a ride and that chicken is already cooked, because it takes like 20 minutes to cook otherwise, and I don't have time for that. There is the glycogen window.
Yep.
30 minutes post exercise. That's when you want to get in, and that's when your muscle absorption, the glycogen absorption, is greater. That's the window. The window's open in that 30 minutes. So you want to fuel your recovery in that time. So chicken and rice, and that it really helps to have that pre-made. So killer set of Tupperware, get it out, heat it up in the belly.
Yeah, I think another really overlooked part of the like post ride workout nutrition plan is hydration. I think we like often just want to like run straight into food because we're just hungry, but a lot of times like our body kind of mistakes hunger or thirst for hunger. And especially when it's warm and hot, we're doing hard rides, like it's hard to keep up with our fluid needs. And so I always like chug a big glass of water right when I come in the door. And then my favorite post-ride recovery meal is the smoothie bowl, and I've talked about that. We should do a winning in the kitchen video on that, I think, at some point.
Your smoothie bowl?
Yeah.
You want to tell everyone what's in your smoothie bowl real quick?
So I mean, for example, yesterday I did like a hard 2-hour ride, and then I went to the gym afterwards, did some strength training, and so I was like pretty hungry, and like so I came home and I had like dino kale. So what's the cool thing about the smoothie bowl is that it's really fast, and it's like if you have all the ingredients in your fridge or at your house, it's like it takes 5 minutes to put together. So I did like dino kale, 3 bananas, frozen berries, some flax and chia seeds, a little bit of plant-based protein powder, some soy milk, and probably like some cinnamon turmeric for the anti-inflammatory. And then I just blend that up and make it into smoothie. And then I just pour it into a bowl, and I put like muesli on top or granola, some pumpkin seeds, peanut butter. And that's like a solid meal.
Yeah.
Done. Or I'll just make enough, like more dinner or lunch from the night before than I would be able to eat.
Leftovers.
And then just have leftovers in the fridge and just heat them up in the microwave, and you're good. I mean, so that's like 5-10 minutes within walking in the door. You know, you're getting food in. So it's key.
I think and to dovetail off of this, I just remember this. I get a lot of questions about protein recovery shakes. Yeah. And I'm not a fan, and I'll tell you why. Because it's something you drink. They often have a ton of calories in them. Yeah. And then you're still hungry because you drank that and your stomach doesn't feel full. And then you go off and you have a meal and you just had double calories. Right. And nothing wrong with that if you've done a huge mega ride that day. But if you've only done like an hour and a half or 2 hours, it's like, get that protein from the chicken and rice or from what you just said, and you're good. And the other thing is, when you get done with a long ride, hot ride in the summer on the weekend, for example, I'm not ready to take in that chicken and rice right away. So I'll have a couple glasses of water and a banana. Yeah. No, that's my glycogen window. And then like an hour later, maybe after I've showered, then I go to my chicken and rice. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, I think it's key to, like another good pro tip is to have, you know, before you head out on your ride, just throw some rice in the rice cooker, you know, and just like have some rice right when you get in the door, you know, and then, you know, kind of start to like, and that's the thing is like people think you need to eat just like the one meal right after the ride, but it's also your body can only absorb so many carbohydrates and protein at one time. And so it's about, especially during big blocks of training or big rides, it's about consistently kind of like, you know, filling the tank up throughout the rest of the day, especially if you have another hard ride the next day. If you just eat a big meal right after your ride and then you just eat garbage the rest of the day, it's gonna undermine your training. So the biggest thing for the people that are new to winning in the kitchen is cook your food in advance. Do not come back to a kitchen where you have to cook that food. You know, that takes too much time. You're probably not going to do that. Yeah. And the second thing is, you know, have that food from the grocery store and, you know, plan that stuff out in advance. Chris Butler asks how many grams of carb to protein. Pretty well established in the scientific literature. It's a 4-to-1 ratio. And, you know, it's funny when Scratch Labs came out with their recovery mix, Alan Lim wrote a piece describing the product, and he said there's really no magic from 5-to-1 or 3-to-1. You know, you just want to make sure you got more carbs and just a little bit of protein. And
I'll just say with that, focus on quality over quantity. Don't worry too much about the numbers. Like, as long as you're eating real food with enough calories, like, you're gonna be fine. And then also Timothy asked about sweet potatoes. Just quickly, pre or post? I would say definitely post. I mean, sweet potatoes are typically pretty high in fiber, and so it could give you stomach issues if you have sweet potatoes right before a ride. And after, I mean, they're great. Like, the only thing with sweet potatoes is sometimes, like, right after a ride, your body wants fuel that is easy to absorb and digest. Sometimes for some people, sweet potatoes can be tough to digest, especially if you cook them with the skin on. But that's a great addition to a meal later in the day. Yeah. As like your normal, like, real meal, you know. But like right after a ride, fruit or like white rice, easy to digest, you know, and absorb. Like that's the money right there for getting that into the cells and replenishing that glycogen. I
find rice is way easier to prepare than sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes take more chef ability. Yeah, totally. I remember when, you know, long ago when U.S. Postal was the dominant team, I read somewhere that they were eating baked potatoes in their 30-minute glycogen window post race on the bus. Yeah. And I tried that one race, and you know what did not work? room temp baked potato.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to have it like warmed up and, nice and soft. Yeah. So, in another good, we're going to beat this with a dead horse again, chicken and rice burrito.
Yeah. I'm a big burrito fan.
Me too.
That's my favorite food.
It's a good post-ride race recovery meal.
Yeah.
Especially if you get it in that 30-minute post exercise.
It's also a great option when you're on the road. Those Chipotles are seemingly everywhere now.
Yes.
All right, next question.
Okay, next question.
All right, from Ray G, asking about explaining intensity factor and if it's worthwhile to address the tweaking of intensity factor and duration as it relates to TSS during sweet spot based base training.
Yeah, so intensity factor is a metric in Training Peaks. The software calculates. It was invented by Dr. Andy Coggan as a way of getting to. It's a part of the formula that goes into calculating normalized power, and then of course TSS. So intensity factor is really just a percentage of how hard you rode in relation to your FTP. So if you ride at FTP watts, that's an intensity factor of 1. Right? If you do like base training at 70%, that's an intensity factor of 0.7. On the other hand, if you do VO2 max intervals at 105 to 120%, that's an intensity factor of 1.05 or 1.2. So intensity factor is not something we really tweak or prescribe. You do that with your zone-based training. So you do sweet spot, that's 84 to 97%. It just goes into the workout prescription. So not really something you tweak, but you do prescribe it as, within the training plan.
And that's why it's important to have a properly set FTP, right?
Very much so. Yeah, because your intensity factor this is what we were kind of talking about last week in the, determining your FTP from the group rats. I mean, if you're, physiologically, goes back to the deductive reasoning, in theory, you can only ride for 1 hour at a 1.0 intensity factor. That's a max effort. That's what your FTP is. If you ride for 1 hour at 1.05, 105% of your intensity factor, that's physiologically impossible. In order to make that real, you got to raise your FTP by 5%. Yeah. That's the beauty of 60-minute normalized maximal power. And that's exactly what we were podcasting last week. Okay.
Next question from Mike. Hi, Frank and crew. Can you lay out your ideal training plan progression for a cyclocross racer? How to plan the year after a season and break, and then start training in January and progressing up through the end of race season in late December. Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome, Mike. We do a lot on cyclocross, and right now our podcast and what we've been talking about, I apologize, we have kind of neglected the cyclocrossers because their annual training plan is so different than the road, mountain bike, and gravel. Everyone road, mountain, gravel is like we're foaming at the mouth
we're in the full on.
Yeah, we're doing base and CTO and training camps and going hard and getting ready to race. But the cyclocrosser is really, most good cyclocrossers right now, 100% dedicated to their season beginning in September, need to be in the weight room. And really, they're kind of maybe just getting that started or midway through, because January and February for a cross racer are kind of on the DL. You're taking a break from your season. You're just not, you're not really doing too much. So
unless you're Wout van Aert getting third again at Strade Bianche.
Right. Matthew Vanderpool.
I saw he was
animating the race yesterday. Unfortunately, I think he crashed.
Oh no.
Yeah, I didn't see the extent of his injuries, but I know there was some talk about maybe that was a classics ender, which is a shame because I think everyone was looking forward to seeing him light it up. But that's a different question. That goes back to our should you race or not race secret training tip that Brandon just wrote, talking about how if you want to be truly dedicated to the cyclocross season, you can do mountain bike races, you can do road races and crits, but you got to do them as training. You should not do them for looking at performance. And so there should be no modification of your training plan. Don't get stressed out about it. Just treat it like a hard group ride. Go read Brandon's training tip. It's the latest one in our secret training section. But Mike, to get back to answer your question, what you want to do right now is it's our cyclocross off-season strength training program. That's the 10-week resistance training phase plan that we've podcasted about. And then after that, when you get, that's 10 weeks, that's what you kind of want to be doing, March through May. When you get out of that, you want to move on to our cyclocross summer sweet spot plan. And you want to do that in the summer months, June and July. Then you want to move on to our 6 weeks to cyclocross plan. Begin that 6 weeks prior to your first race. And that's going to have all your cyclocross race start practices, your skills, your running drills, everything to get you ready. And then once the season begins, you want to get into our cyclocross intervals plan for another 6 weeks. And then by then you want to get into a race and recover mode. And then after that, you want to look at our cyclocross peak for nationals plan. And it's all laid out on our website. We do have all 5 of those plans bundled to save you some money if you want. But for all you cyclocrossers out there, you want to be doing your Ninos, you want to be doing your strength and conditioning, a lot of mobility work, a lot of strength work, and getting in the gym. And don't get too fired up about riding too much too soon. It's a long time till September.
Cool. All right. Next question from Tanner. What is the optimal way to spend a rest week? Cutting the volume but keeping the intensity high with group rides, or keeping the volume but dropping the intensity? He's kind of talking about the difference between rest weeks and taper weeks, and had some questions about why do we keep the intensity high, cut the volume in taper weeks, and then after every 3-week block followed by a rest week, should one treat it as a taper for the next block of training, or to assure that your taper plan is optimal for your A race? So there's a lot there.
Couple of questions there.
Yeah.
Let's tackle the rest week first. So rest week, to me, I lead off every rest week and every training plan, whether it's a training plan or a coached rider, with Monday, Tuesday completely off. Do your active recovery modalities, nap, yoga. I don't even bother with an active recovery ride. That's the 2 days every month, because you do it every 4 weeks, that you don't have to ride. And that's where I get my life balance back.
Yeah.
I'll if I'll dig back into work, or maybe do that errand that,
clean the house. And
I don't clean the house.
No.
I'm just kidding. We do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that. Laundry, I had to go get my car registration tags the other day.
Yeah.
I did that on a recovery day.
Yeah.
Anywho, we digress. Your volume, I like for it to be 50% of the previous week, presuming the previous week has been an overload week. So if you did 12 hours as part of your periodization, so it's 3 weeks on, 1 week off. Say you do 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. So your rest week would be 6 hours. Super simple, 50%. Don't get greedy and do 9 hours. That's not going to be a rest week. A lot of people get greedy with their CTL and they don't like to see it fall. Let it go down. Because you know what goes up when your CTL goes down? Your form, your TSB. So when you take a rest week, what you want to see happen when you come back to training, you feel rested and you feel more powerful on the bike. We do a lot of field testing at the end of a rest week, and I want to see that the athlete feels good and makes more power. If they don't feel good or make more power, that rest week was ineffective, and you need to go back and take a look at your volume from that rest week. In terms of TSS, if you did an 800 TSS week in that 12 hours, cut it down to 400. It's not a lot. It's actually rest. It is going to be counterintuitive to how much you should be resting. Use the couch as a training tool. Movies, Hulu, more sleep, etc. Get a massage. Go to the float tank. Things that you don't normally have time for. So, dropping the intensity. I think you need to maintain the intensity. I'll do
for tapering.
This is same for tapering and rest week. Taper is really just a double rest week. You decrease the volume, you actually maintain or increase the intensity And then we could get on a whole podcast about taper length and, all that.
I think we've done a podcast on taper.
The art of taper?
Yeah.
I think so too.
We were talking about that like leading into the crusher and stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go back and listen to some of our older podcasts if you haven't already.
Maybe we should include that in the show notes.
I will.
Okay. But getting back to the rest week, so Monday, Tuesday off, then Wednesday is going to be an interval day. It's going to be a shorter ride, but you want to do race-specific intervals. If you're doing a climbing event, you might do 2x10 threshold. If you're doing mountain biking or cyclocross or road, you might do like 3 by 1 minute on, 1 minute off, full gas, zone 6. And then Thursday is off. And then, depending on the plan or the customization, Friday could be another off day, or maybe Thursday is a super short fun ride and Friday's off. And then generally if it's preseason, I like for my athletes on Saturdays to just stretch their legs. I want to see that response to the rest week. I want to measure their improvement in their power output. So hope that answers your question, Tanner.
All right, next question from Jeff.
Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. He's doing the gravel plan currently and throwing in a 3-day training camp block of off-plan big rides next week. Mm-hmm. He asks, how do I make the adjustment in Training Peaks so that I can insert this new block into Training Peaks and then continue on with the FasCat gravel plan as designed?
Yeah. So I know Jeff. I can tell he's been listening to the podcast because I think what he's referencing is our training camp podcast, the personal training camp. And this is the only time when going not FTFPing is okay. We joke. But what you do, this is awesome. I mean, I applaud everyone for, taking a personal training camp on them. And so let's say your 3-day training camp is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So what you want to do in your plan is edit it. And, you can do in Training Peaks, you just do left click, drag and drop. And believe it or not, you want to give yourself some off days coming into the 3-day block so that you actually have the oomph and the strength and the recovery to do 3 good days. So let's say you're going to a warm weather location, which a lot of people are right now, in like on spring break, coming up, like me. And so definitely take Thursday off, maybe take Wednesday off. So now Friday, you're super fresh. Friday, say you do 4 to 6 hour ride, right? Then Saturday, maybe you go as big. And then Sunday, you kind of just bring it home, maybe, a 3 to 4 hour ride. These would all be TSS rides. We can go listen to our training camp podcast. But then after that, so you want to edit your plan upstream. That's what we just talked about. And then downstream. Downstream, the edit would be based on how fatigued you are, how much volume you got in, how you can look at your ATL, your acute training load. If you get in like 12 hours in 3 days, for example, you may not be able to do that interval workout on your plan that's scheduled for Tuesday. You may want to move that to Wednesday. So Monday is always going to be a rest day. Tuesday may be another rest day, or it could be like a zone 2 1 hour ride. And then I think you'd be pretty good to go on Wednesday to ride hard again. Then you can resume your plan. And so maybe you take those weeks and edit them that way. You can also repeat the following week if there's some good stuff in there that you want to do. You can copy and paste and drag and drop and move that week forward. And that's a really good way to customize your training plan per your training camp. Good luck with that. Yeah,
sounds awesome.
Raise that CTL.
All right. Question number 8 from Matt. How do I use my lab test results with my plan? So he's just signed up for the Marathon Sweet Spot plan and had his lactate threshold done with heart rate but no power last year. Mm-hmm. So how would that influence or impact his sweet spot zone?
Oh boy. Okay. So so let me just give you some background, because I used to have our own physiology lab, and we would have athletes come in and do physiological testing. But in order to do power-based training, the problem about laboratory testing is it doesn't translate out onto your handlebar. It's really good in the lab, incredible information, and it's highly repeatable, and you can do 2 lab tests and glean an enormous amount of information from, say, January through April. what I find difficult is translating the laboratory results into what your power-based training should be, and it's FTP. And, FTP gets a lot of flack, but I did an extensive amount of development of a maximal lactate steady state protocol. The goal was to determine maximal MLSS in the lab and then be able to equal your FTP, so you could take that results from the lab out onto your handlebar. The problem with that is the results didn't translate too well. We actually did a study. We had research subjects. We convinced people to go out and do a 1-hour time trial.
Ugh.
The day after they did an MLSS test in the lab. Actually, it was 2 days. We gave them a day of rest. But a lot of your teammates came and became research subjects. Carson Christian did the study. The results were statistically insignificant. And, I was talking with some other physiologists, and they're like, the laboratory data consistently is about 5% less when you do an MLSS test. But the thing is, that's why our training plans have a 20-minute field test, is if you want to know your power-based zones out on the road, you need to do a power-based test out on the road. I do not know of any laboratory protocol to this date that can give you your power-based zones out on the road. Now, before everyone rips me a new one for that, what I just said, it'll get you close. And so to help you transfer your lab test results to the handlebar, the threshold heart rate that you get from the lab, you can use that as your threshold heart rate in your training plan for heart rate based training. So that's really good. Say you find out your threshold heart rate is 170 beats per minute. Boom, put that in Training Peaks. You got your zone 2, your tempo, sweet spot, everything. You're good to go there. Where the power-based training is going to be, it's going to get you in a narrow window, but I still think you want to go back out and do the field test. So a lot of laboratory results, and this depends on what type of test you had done, what protocol was used. A lot of laboratory tests will use 4 millimole as the break point in the curve, and they'll say, okay, you were doing 250 watts at 4 millimole. That's your threshold. The problem is, a lot of athletes can do a lot more than that. A lot of athletes can sustain 260, 270 for an hour, and that's just their response, their lactate response to 250 watts. So that's why you need to go out and find out in the road. That's what your road races are. That's what your time trials, your hill climbs. Go and find out. That's when a 20-minute field test, when done properly, is repeatable and it's real data, and I think it's superior to lab tests when it comes to your following your plan, zone-based training, so forth. So use the threshold you get from your laboratory test as maybe like a guideline for where you should start with your field test.
Yeah, cool.
Have you done laboratory testing?
I have, yeah. And I think that they have their place, like you said, but it's just not the same as being out on the road. And I think especially for someone doing mountain biking, so many more factors at play than what you can put out in the lab, and so you have to keep that in mind. And I think, again, like you said earlier, half glass full, we're capable of so much more than we think, and just being in a lab in that controlled setting has its place. But I don't know, it's like I don't feel like I can put out the same amount of power as I can up in a race or on a field test, even, because it's like it just doesn't feel the same as actually moving forward and pushing the watts down. So
that's right.
That's just me. Some people have that intrinsic motivation in the lab and can put out massive watts.
You get to a point in that lab test where you're going to failure and you're like, what am I doing this for?
What am I doing with my life?
And you're
questioning all life decisions at that point.
And it doesn't get any harder. You're like, you make a deal with yourself. You could be like, all right, 3 more seconds, 30 more seconds. Yeah. And then 30 more seconds are up. And then the guy's encouraging you to do another stage. And you're like, why?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Oh, it's brutal.
But, we have a training tip on our website. It's maximal lactate steady state testing. I publish all the, I just shared in this training tip what I just explained. We had an athlete do a 20-minute test while we took lactate values every 4 minutes, I believe. And so the lactate curve is pretty interesting in relation to going as hard as you can for 20 minutes. So a little bit of difference of real world versus laboratory.
Cool. All right. Question number 9 from Patrick. I've been on the 18 weeks of Sweet Spot for about 13 weeks now, pretty consistently FTFPing.
Yeah, baby.
It's been working great. I've not felt this base fit in years.
Awesome.
It makes one of us. I will soon switch to gravel intervals to prepare for the DK, Dirty Kanza, in June. My concern is, should I keep trying for more CTL during the initial intervals week? I will top out at about 86 or 87 CTL in the next couple of weeks if all goes well. Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick. And folks, I know Patrick. Happy birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Patrick. I know because we were, Facebook tells you, whose birthday it is. So, that's, thanks for submitting your question. Patrick is probably the most enthusiastic, positive person I know. And I want him to, dominate the DK.
Yeah.
And so you ask a really good question. Now, when you're doing intervals and you're going for power, you're not going for CTL. So this goes back to our master's CTL and using the Performance Manager Chart podcast. Let that CTL level out, plateau. Don't be building. When you're building, you're going to have too much fatigue in your system to really maximize the physiological benefits from going full gas on your intervals. So then that begs the question of the timing of the intervals in relation to your goal. And I think you're talking about finish up the Sweet Spot plan, do the intervals, let that CTL level out, and then you do the gravel plan build after that. So it's a really nice, you're winning and you're doing your intervals and you're building a huge aerobic engine. So the overall thing is don't get greedy with the CTL while you're doing intervals.
Yeah, because at the same time though, like the DK is such a unique kind of event to prepare for that. There's a lot of that is like, I don't know if it's his first time doing it, but I'm sure that there's a lot of like mental training that needs to be done, getting your equipment dialed. But I feel like you just got to hammer the volume.
Hammer the volume, and with this for DK training, I think a lot of athletes do not do VO2s, anaerobic work in their preparation for an event like the Crusher or DK. And, that's one of the things I was saying in my review. It's like, I'm going to do more VO2s and threshold work this year. But here's the deal. This is different than road race training or mountain biking or cyclocross. You still got to do the volume. You just got to find out the time of your annual training plan to do the intensity to keep your physiology well-rounded. You got to do the VO2 work. And so build, but then shift your focus over to intervals and then go back to building. Yeah. I don't think you could technically build, then do intervals, let that CTL fall, and then do the race. But I think you might have better success building, to like 80% of where you want your CTL to be, let it level off, do some intervals, and then build upon that. And then when you're doing that second like super long endurance build, you have that diesel engine really at a much higher level because you have done that VO2 work.
Cool. That's it for our questions that were submitted via email. Do we have any questions from the Facebook feed?
Yeah. Coach Jake says it's bring your parents to work day because his mom and dad are watching.
Wow. That's awesome. What's this? Stefan asks if going on vacation for 7 to 10 days, should I use the week leading up to the vacation to accumulate a high level of TSS so I can recover while on vacation? Hopefully I would return from this vacation without a loss of fitness is the best way to. So this is kind of like the opposite of a training camp.
Yeah.
Where it's like a rest vacation where you're away from the bike. So that's a good question.
Yeah. And, so what Jake was explaining is, this is how we do it with our coach athletes. Here's the way it works and the way it doesn't work. Let your coach know that you're going on a vacation like 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Then your coach can get it to work because then you just, use that week as part of the regeneration week or rest week as part of your periodization. But if you're like jamming along and you just took a rest week and then you're like, oh, hey, I'm going on vacation for 5 days, it's like, that's too much rest. So, but like plan it out, and when done right, you do the week leading into that vacation is an overload week. That's the 3rd week of the mesocycle. Then you go on vacation, you take rest, and then you come back and boom, you're rested, you're fresh, and you're good. You're G2G.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, let's get him. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Scott asks, big one.
Oh, man.
Let's see if we can simplify this. So just started the advanced cross-country interval program. A race is in 8 weeks, so this will be a perfect with a 2-week taper. How can I integrate the program with the specificity of my race? It looks like his race happens to be in his backyard, so he has the option to ride the course a lot. Program mostly requires me to get my intensity on more consistent terrain like gravel climbs. Is there a way of occasionally substituting some real-world single track for a threshold VO2 or anaerobic workout? So basically, like doing your efforts on the actual course.
Well, yeah, that sounds really good. I'm not sure what kind of race this is. What kind of race are we talking about?
Cross-country race, looks like.
XC race, so XC intervals. Do the XC intervals on the race course. Sounds like a good way to do it to me.
Practice how you want to play.
Yeah. Okay, but still follow the plan.
Yeah.
Just because you're on the on single track or anything doesn't mean you get to not follow the plan.
Just tuned in. Did you guys touch on that underweight, low power guys? What is that? I don't understand what that means.
Nope. I don't know. So everyone, let's do the Hail Mary. 5 minutes to go. Questions.
Few more minutes here. If you have any questions.
Yeah, get those questions in. This is our Q&A one, so we don't really have a topic. Okay. Whoa. Well, while we're waiting for those questions, what should we say to the audio listeners in podcast land?
I hope you're all enjoying the springtime and getting out on the bike.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, this is, we're doing this every month, so feel free to answer, send us questions as they pop up in your brain. We love doing this, and it's fun to have, consistent good questions. And so it helps us to get, compile that into a list over the course of the month. And then what else is going on? Well,
you and Coach Isaiah are going to do the nutrition podcast next week.
I don't know if we'll be able to do it live on Facebook though.
Yeah, which is fine. So everyone listening in Facebook land, make sure you subscribe, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and you'll get a notification when that podcast goes live. We'll be back in 2 weeks on the live Facebooks. That is, I do not know what we're talking about. I haven't looked at our content calendar.
And so definitely share the podcast with your friends, your teammates, your coaches. All of that stuff just helps us spread the word, and and just like it's a good way to help us out in a super easy way.
Yeah. So let's take Justin's question.
All right. Should this be the final question?
Maybe. We still got time.
Yeah, we still got a few minutes.
A few more questions in.
All right. So what are your thoughts on underweight with low power guys? I've been trying to gain weight while getting my CTL up, so curious on your thoughts on it. Eat more. I mean, that's really like...
Gain weight. My question would be, why are you trying to gain weight?
He's saying he's underweight and has low power. So, I mean, obviously that's a very obscure and broad...
We need more information, Justin.
But if you're having trouble with keeping your weight on,
maybe you're not eating enough.
Definitely a sign of not eating enough and training too hard. You shouldn't be doing massive amounts of volume and intensity unless you're feeling that, because that's a common question or a common issue where athletes are consistently training too hard and not eating enough, they get energy imbalance, and then they kind of run down this road of running their body into a deficit, and that can cause all sorts of problems. We don't have to get into that today. Maybe Isaiah and I can talk about that next week. Talk about maintaining your caloric intake during periods of heavy training, because it's hard. It can be really hard, especially if you're on a plant-based diet, for example. Like, it can be often difficult because it can be tiring to eat as much food as you need to sometimes, and it's it's a balance and it's an art. So I would just suggest, winning in the kitchen, but also figuring out A, why are you underweight, and B, how underweight are you, and do some meditation on how to do on like what's going on there, because it could be other factors at play.
He may be talking about underweight as in he wants to increase muscle mass, like bigger legs, or and that begins in the weight room in the off season, so that's the best place. And then just make sure you're not dieting. Dieting and raising CTL do not mix, and go ahead and eat up.
Don't count calories, or try and cut carbs or whatever. Just eat real food, enough of it to feel satisfied and to feel like you're not fighting a gorilla every time you go on the bike. You're a Ferrari. Put that gas in the Ferrari, high performance octane. All right, well, I believe our time is mostly up. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We'll do this again in 4 weeks. I'm going on spring break. You're going on a bike ride after this, maybe? Yes. Looks nice out still. Yes, sure it is. I'm gonna go eat a burrito. All this food talk has got me hungry. Go stop at Chipotle on the way home. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully we'll talk to you next week, and look forward to chatting with Isaiah about food. Yes. FTFP, and have a good one. Bye. Later.